The current Fleet Admiral of the Marines, Sakazuki, has been revealed to have the highest active bounty in One Piece and the third highest ever seen in the story, worth a staggering 5 billion berries. With this new revelation, it's time to update the power ranking, and today we're listing the top 10 strongest characters in One Piece, focusing only on those who are still alive and active in the final saga. So, does the man with the highest bounty right now also claim the top spot on this list? To determine this, we'll consider their history of achievement, narrative importance, and even age in some cases. There are a few characters who would certainly make this list, but I've chosen to leave them out for different reasons. The first is ELBAF's strongest warrior, Prince Loki, with a bounty of 2.6 billion berries, which puts him in the same reward range as the Emperor's. However, since his powers haven't been revealed yet by the time of this recording, he's not included. I'm also not including Big Mom, and those who are subscribed to the channel know full well that she's still alive and would definitely make the cut, but for now, her return remains unconfirmed. Dragon is another one I'm leaving out, even though he'd be a guaranteed entry. I'm getting more and more convinced that this man will show up with a bounty of 10 billion berries, but right now, he still lacks enough on-screen feats for us to gauge his power accurately. As for the Gorosei, despite having shown their combat abilities, including monstrous Haoshoku, immense speed, and strength, they lack the durability needed to compete with anyone on this list or even others who didn't make the cut. No matter how many times they regenerate, the Gorosei's durability is as thin as paper, so I decided to exclude them from this ranking. With that said, let's dive into our definitive top 10 most powerful characters in One Piece. But before we get started, don't forget to hit the like button below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell to join my crew. Let's reach 1,000 subscribers and finally monetize the channel. Now, let's set sail on our adventure. In 10th place, we have the right-hand man of the Pirate King, Silver's Rayleigh. The Dark King has a long history. He took part in the God Valley incident, where he faced the Rocks Pirates. Years later, he fought against the Whitebeard Pirates for 3 consecutive days, and also against the Golden Lion Pirates during the Battle of Ed War. Rayleigh has shown proficiency in all 3 types of hockey, being able to use advanced forms of armament, like when he broke the shackles off the mermaid Cammy, and Conqueror's Hockey when he protected Amazon Lily from Blackbeard Pirates' invasion. Even in his old age, Rayleigh managed to hold his own in a sword fight against Kizaru, even leaving a cut on the Admiral's face, proving that the Grandpa's kite could still fly. But, unfortunately, due to his physical condition, he showed signs of fatigue shortly into the fight, something that could be fatal in a prolonged battle against an Admiral. Another standout moment came during his encounter with the Whitebeard Pirates, where Rayleigh managed to halt Marco the Phoenix's advance with just a single blackened finger. An epic scene, no doubt, though many forget that Marco was still just an apprentice back then, and that scene in particular wasn't in the manga. His last big moment in the manga happened during the Blackbeard Pirates' invasion of Amazon Lily. Releasing his Haoshoku Haki and infusing it into his sword, Rayleigh was able to stop the invasion solely with the weight of his name. However, he admitted that they were lucky and that he wouldn't be able to defeat Blackbeard today. At first glance, this might make us think Rayleigh could have defeated him in the past, but people often overlook that if this fight had taken place in the past, not only would Rayleigh be in better shape, but Blackbeard wouldn't be as strong as he is now either. Blackbeard was merely an apprentice when Rayleigh was in his prime, but these days, the balance of power has shifted. Moreover, despite Rayleigh's legendary status, it was always Roger who faced the most powerful opponents, like Garp and Whitebeard, while Rayleigh dealt with less significant foes, even being somewhat overshadowed and lacking in notable victory. For these reasons, in this current power ranking, the Dark King holds the 10th spot. Now, alongside Rayleigh, I'd like to open a parenthesis and place 2 other characters on the same level, Admirals Fujitora and Aramaki. Holding the title of Admiral, both have bounties equivalent to 3 billion berries each, according to Cross Guild's classification. Fujitora, in particular, wields one of the 12 Supreme Grade swords, which he always uses in conjunction with his Gravity Fruit and Observation Haki. His greatest feat to date was facing Sabo, the Revolutionary Army's right-hand man, and coming out on top without even fighting with the intent to settle the battle. Fujitora still lacks significant achievements, especially in terms of Haki, and his most notable feat with his Devil Fruit has been repeated across various media, pulling a meteor from space. Seriously, it was cool the first time, but it's getting old now. Next time, maybe pull the whole moon and bring Enel along while you're at it. As for Aramaki, he had the merit of easily subduing King and Queen in Wano. Even though both were still wounded from previous battles, battles, Aramaki himself said he'd never lose to mere commanders like them, indicating that even at full strength, they'd still be defeated. Aramaki possesses the Forest Logia, and it appears he's awakened his devil fruit, judging by his hair's resemblance to Luffy's awakened form. On the flip side, we saw Aramaki completely back down when confronted with Shanks' Haoshoku Haki, something I could never imagine Rayleigh doing if he were caught in the same situation. But to be fair, Aramaki ventured to Wano alone, confident he could capture Luffy, even knowing that the rest of the Straw Hats and their allies were present. In fact, Aramaki managed to subdue all the samurai with ease in very little time. However, with Shanks' arrival, the Admiral would have had to face two Emperor's crews alone, Shanks' and the Straw Hats, which justifies his strategic retreat, to avoid calling it a full retreat. In short, while Rayleigh stands out for his haki, the Admirals shine more due to their devil fruit powers. And considering the Dark King in his old age and the two Admirals with the least notable feats so far, I see the three of them currently on a similar level. In 9th place, we have the hero of the Navy, Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp. Like the other admirals, Garp received a bounty equivalent to 3 billion berries from Cross Guild, even though he holds the rank of Vice Admiral. We know Garp could have taken the position of Admiral multiple times if he wanted, but he chose to remain a Vice Admiral. Even so, his strength was acknowledged as being equal to an Admiral's in the eyes of Cross Guild. Garp has legendary feats to his name, having defeated Pirate Chinjo by crushing his drillhead in a direct clash, defeated and captured the Golden Lion Shiki alongside his comrade Sengoku, fought dozens of times against the Pirate King Roger in battles that almost brought them to the brink of death, and was the main force behind the downfall of Rox D. Zebek during the God Valley incident, where he earned his title of hero. But to be fair, we need to remember that Garp had to ally with Roger to defeat the Rox pirates, and that alliance was hidden by the Navy and the government. In other words, Garp was solely credited for the victory over Zebek, when, in reality, he needed the help of Roger's pirates. So his title of hero came from a half-truth. His most recent feat was fighting the former Admiral Aokiji. Garp left his mark on Hachinosu with his Galaxy Impact, which I'd say was the greatest display of advanced armament haki in One Piece history, not to mention his use of Conqueror's haki infused with his technique. Even in his old age, he managed to hold his own against the former Admiral. However, Garp himself acknowledged that Aokiji was holding back during the fight, which contributed to Garp staying on the offensive for most of the battle. At the same time, besides facing Aokiji, Garp also had to deal with other members of Blackbeard's pirates, and he handled himself quite well most of the time. The real problem was Shiryu of the Rain, who pierced the Vice Admiral with his sword. Even then, Garp still managed to slam Shiryu into the ground right after. Afterwards, Garp and Aokiji exchanged blows using only their haki, sending both Garp and Aokiji to the ground. Garp still managed to get up and destroy the island skull with his Galaxy Divide, but ultimately, he ended with his body impaled by Aokiji's Ice Spear, marking his defeat. This was an interesting battle precisely because of the many variables Oda introduced, making us question who would have truly won if there hadn't been external interference on either side. But considering Garp's advanced age, Aokiji's hesitation to go all out, the fact that other members of Blackbeard's crew posed virtually no threat to Garp for most of the fight, and even the sword wound not stopping Garp from continuing the battle, I'd say that in a one-on-one, Aokiji would have the upper hand if he fought with everything from the start. Therefore, the hero of the Navy takes the 9th spot. In 8th place, we naturally have former Admiral Aokiji. So far, we don't have any information about his bounty, since as a former admiral, his bounty might not necessarily match the 3 billion berries assigned by Cross Guild. It could be more or less. As for his history, we've seen Aokiji defeat Daimon Jozu with a single hit when the opportunity presented itself, challenge Doflamingo, forcing him to retreat back to Dressrosa, take down the Sweet Commander Cracker in Whole Cake Island, put fear into Blackbeard's pirates when they met during the time skip, and face Fleet Admiral Sakazuki head-to-head in a battle that lasted for 10 consecutive days. In Hachinosu, his most recent feat was being the primary reason for the victory over Vice Admiral Garp. Since we've already discussed the main points of that battle, I'll be brief and place Aokiji in the 8th position. In 7th place, we have Admiral Kizaru. Like Garp and the other admirals, Kizaru received a bounty equivalent to 3 billion berries from Cross Guild. In his introduction arc, Kizaru fought the Dark King, Rayleigh, in a sword duel, showing no signs of fatigue or exhaustion like his opponent. During the War of the Best, Kizaru was the only admiral to leave 100% intact, without so much as a scratch. At the end of the war, he was briefly stopped by Beckman, but let's not forget Kizaru's sarcastic personality, and that shortly after, he continued his attack on Law's submarine, leaving Beckman looking stunned. It wasn't until the Egghead arc that Kizaru displayed more of his abilities. Luffy, in his Gear 4 Snake Man form, didn't stand a chance against Kizaru's strength and speed, forcing him to switch to his most powerful form to stand a chance. In other words, Luffy's most powerful form faced off against a Kizaru who didn't even showcase a potential awakening, only using his most basic techniques. In the end, both ended up on the ground, with Luffy exhausted from his own power, while Kizaru pretended he couldn't continue fighting. Recently, we had an almost explicit confirmation from Oda saying that it was Kizaru himself who brought food to Luffy after the battle. In other words, instead of giving Luffy food, Kizaru had the chance to fire a laser down Luffy's throat. One laser shot to the heart would have ended Luffy's life. Just like in the battle at Hachinosu, Oda crafted a scenario where both Kizaru and Aokiji were forced to confront former friends, and as a result, they hesitated in their fights. I decided to place Kizaru above Aokiji in this ranking due to the way each of them ended after their respective battle. Aokiji with minor injuries, while Kizaru was virtually unscathed. But even with this virtual victory of Kizaru over Luffy, I still rank him in 7th place. The reason? I'll explain next. Given the spoiler, in 6th place we have one of the current emperors of the sea, Monkey D. Luffy. Like the other admirals and his grandfather Garp, Luffy also has a 3 billion berries bounty issued by the government. His history is well known to us. His main feat was his victory over Emperor Kaido, using the most powerful punch of all, the Bajrang Gun, against Kaido's final form. Even though this victory came after numerous attempts and failures, and with various allies contributing to the defeat and presumed death of Kaido, it was Luffy who stood out the most and received the greatest credit for this battle. In Egghead, we saw Luffy facing Kizaru in the context I explained in the previous rank, and after regaining his energy, with Kizaru's own help, he returned to face both Kizaru and Gorosei Saturn together. Not only that, he also managed to face several Gorosei members simultaneously when they were all summoned to Egghead as well. The reason I place Luffy a step above Kizaru in this ranking is because we've seen Luffy lose to his opponents before finally defeating them. In some instances, Luffy was even defeated more than once before emerging victorious in the final round. A clear example of this is during the Punk Hazard arc. In the first encounter, Caesar Clown defeated Luffy, Frankie, Robin, Smoker, and Tashigi, who had their bodies switched, as if they were nothing. At the end of the arc, as we saw, Luffy had the chance to face and defeat Caesar Clown, now more aware of his opponent's ability. Of course, in the case of a rematch between Luffy and Kizaru, it doesn't mean Kizaru would be defeated so easily, but given Luffy's demonstrated resilience, I still see Luffy a step higher and capable of defeating Kizaru in a truly serious fight. Of course, Kizaru may still have the awakening of his devil fruit to be revealed, but since that's still speculation, based on what we've seen, I still see Luffy as slightly superior, and that's why he's in 6th place. In 5th place on this list, we have the world's strongest swordsman, Dracule Mihawk. Mihawk currently has a bounty of 3.5 billion berries, the closest bounty to that of the Emperor. In fact, Mihawk could be someone who could contest for the title of Emperor, but he prefers to live a quiet life free from disturbance. Mihawk is one of the very few top-tier fighters who have never suffered a scratch throughout the entire series, proving to be a true untouchable monster to this day, which is why I rank him even above admirals and emperors like Luffy. His swordsmanship skill is said to surpass even SHANKS, which always sparks debates about who is the stronger of the two. To this day, everything we've seen SHANKS do in combat has been a 100% swordsmanship-focused style, which would place him below Mihawk, who holds the title of the world's strongest swordsman. Some might argue that Mihawk has greater skill with a sword, while SHANKS might have greater skill with his haki, which is a valid but debatable point. In a battle between swordsmen, haki is something natural and expected to be used, so much so that Zoro learned armament haki precisely from Mihawk. What I mean by this is that when Zoro eventually duels for the title of the strongest swordsman against Mihawk, all forms of haki will be allowed during the battle, and if Zoro wins, he will become the strongest swordsman. So, in the duels between SHANKS and Mihawk, all types of haki were likely permitted, and even so, Mihawk was the one who earned the title of the world's strongest swordsman. Still, on the other hand, I can't ignore a certain favoritism Oda shows towards SHANKS with the way he treats him, and in the end, I wouldn't be surprised if he used any excuse to crown SHANKS as the strongest, be it due to his his haki, his swordsmanship, or any other reason. That's why, for me, Mihawk takes the 5th spot. In 4th place, nearing our podium, we have the Emperor Blackbeard. Blackbeard currently has a bounty of nearly 4 billion berries, making him Luffy's main antagonist and likely the final villain of the entire series, which gives him extra credit. Teach has acquired a total of 2 devil fruits, one of them being the Quake Fruit, granting him the power to destroy the world, and the second, the Darkness Fruit, capable of nullifying all other devil fruits with just a touch. 2 years ago, he managed to defeat the Prodigy and 2nd Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates, Portgas D. Ace. During the time skip, he steamrolled Marco and the remaining members of the Whitebeard Pirates, earning himself the title of Emperor. Recently, he defeated one of the main figures of the new generation, Trafalgar Law, and even managed to overpower the beast Boa Hancock in Amazon Lily. It's also worth remembering the battle between Shanks and Blackbeard, where the red-haired pirate got his famous scar. At that time, Shanks still had his dominant sword arm, while Blackbeard didn't have any of his devil fruits. Many like to underestimate the Fat Man, claiming that this was only possible because Teach caught Shanks off guard, but they forget that Shanks himself admitted he wasn't distracted, in a context where he praised Teach's strength and the danger he represented. Not only that, but the fact that Shanks said his scar hurt when speaking with Whitebeard is something to note. We know that characters who were deeply traumatized by their opponents and got scars in the process tend to feel physical pain when recalling those traumas. We saw this when Luffy heard about Akainu and placed his hand over his chest, and even with Kaido when he remembered Kazuki Oden and felt his scar ache. So Teach didn't just leave a scar on Shanks, but a trauma he hasn't forgotten to this day. However, the main reason I don't rank Teach higher on this list is his habit of always entering a fight with his guard down and taking the first hit. This happened in his fights against Ace, Sengoku, Trafalgar Law, and even against Magellan, which almost proved fatal for him. This bad habit, against a powerful opponent without a devil fruit like Mihawk, for example, could cause significant damage and even lead to his defeat in the long run. Overall, given the character's narrative and literal weight as the main villain of the story and a candidate for the title of King of the World, I see him as someone superior to those already mentioned on this list, which is why he takes the 4th spot. Taking the bronze medal, in 3rd place, we have my man, the current Fleet Admiral, Akainu. Recently, it was revealed that the man has a bounty equivalent to no less than 5 billion berries, the highest active bounty and the 3rd highest ever revealed in the story, almost equal to the bounty of the former world's strongest man, Whitebeard, and below the Pirate King, Goldie Roger. Akainu was undoubtedly the MPV of the Marines during the Marineford War, crushing every pirate he saw. He stopped a Whitebeard quake with just a foot, without even taking his hands out of his pockets, smashed the old man's chest right after a heart attack, and only didn't finish him off then and there because the story needed Whitebeard alive for a little longer. So Akainu simply vanished from the scene after severely injuring Whitebeard. In the second confrontation, he was only hit by Whitebeard because he was caught from behind, yet he retaliated immediately, taking a chunk out of the old man's head. Unfortunately, he got a rib massage, but it wasn't enough to put down the monster, who kept walking as if nothing happened. Shortly after the war, he was 100% healed and ready to face the fight of his life against the then Admiral Aokiji in an intense 10-day duel, emerging victorious and sparing his comrade's life, showing a more merciful side. Unlike Blackbeard, Akainu isn't someone who is easy to hit, let alone defend against, possessing one of the most offensive devil fruits in the series. Moreover, Oda himself once mentioned Akainu as someone so powerful that if he were the protagonist, the One Piece manga would have lasted only a year. Of course, this statement wasn't meant to be taken literally, but it's worth remembering. Currently, as the most powerful relevant Marine and Luffy's main antagonist in the Navy, the least he deserves is 3rd place on this list. Just a reminder, this is a 100% impartial list, free from any conflicts of interest on my part. Taking the silver medal, in 2nd place, we have another pirate among the current emperors, red-haired Shanks. Shanks has a bounty of just over 4 billion berries, making it the 2nd highest active bounty, only below Akainu's 5 billion bounty. Shanks' track record speaks for itself. Recently, he forced Admiral Ryokugyu to completely back down just by threatening him with his Haushoku Haki, even from kilometers away, and he completely obliterated Captain Eustace Kid. Now, if Akainu has a 5 billion bounty, why don't I just put the man above Shanks right away? First, because I am 100% impartial, and second, because there is currently no character in the story that gets the same level of hype from Oda as Shanks. Shanks is constantly compared to Roger, both in personality and fighting style. Recently, Oda stated that the Kamusari used by Roger was only learned by Shanks due to Shanks' own natural talent, something that no other member of the Roger Pirates could have achieved. So, considering the mirror that Oda consistently draws between Shanks and Roger, and how Shanks remains an undefeated and insurmountable barrier today, comparable to the greatest pirate of the past decades, there's not much I can argue against that. If we put Shanks up against anyone on this list, even if the difference is minimal, even if there are characters with a higher bounty than his, I'd still bet on a victory for the red-haired pirate, for the reasons mentioned. That's why he takes second place. Now, if Shanks is in second place, the person who takes the top spot on this list is the current king of the world, Emu. I know I promised not to include characters we haven't seen much of in combat, but who told you to believe me, right? But in this case, I assure you it's for a good reason, and I think it makes perfect sense to make this exception. Emu is currently the king of the world in One Piece, seemingly immortal, immune to both natural and violent death, and someone who has remained at the top of the world, amassing power, knowledge, and experience for over 800 years. That alone puts Emu on a different level of challenge than any other character. Little is known about Emu's powers, but he seems to emulate the form of a demon, considering the appearance of his tail, which is shaped like an arrow. It's speculated that Emu has an antagonistic power to Luffy's, capable of shaping his body similarly to Nika in his awakened form. This is because, just as Nika appears to have come out of a comic book, Emu also seems to reflect this same concept. Both Luffy and Emu are believed to reference old cartoons where characters seem to have rubber-like limbs. If this is confirmed, we would then have the evil version of the sun god Nika himself. But the main reason I put Emu above anyone else on this list is that Emu is being built up as a threat and the greatest challenge to the clan of D. A challenge not just for Luffy, but for the entire clan, and one that might even force Luffy and Teach, two members of the clan of D, to unite to defeat Emu before facing each other to determine who will inherit the title of Pirate King and World King. So, considering the character development Emu has been receiving over the years, I dare say she deserves the top spot. And with that, we've reached the end of another lengthy list here on the channel. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this list considers the character's track record of accomplishments, H factor, and the narrative hype each of them received. But it's also important to note that I see many of these characters as practically equal, or at the very least very close in terms of strength. So sometimes it's just one small detail that makes the difference when ranking one above or below another. But now, I want to know your list down in the comments. If you've made it to the end, enjoyed the video, and aren't subscribed yet, remember to leave that like and double check your subscription down below so you don't miss the next videos.